So, can we talk about Claude limits for a second? Because, no one really explains how it works until it's 9 a.m. You're deep in SwiftUI, and suddenly Claude is like, nope, session limit. And you're just sitting there with half a thought and no reply. I've been there way too many times. Real quick, I'm Daniel. I've been in the iOS game for almost 8 years, freelancing and shipping apps for other people. But since WWDC, I've gone full solo dev, started building in public, and yeah, kind of figuring out this personal brand thing as I go. More on that for another video. First, let's get this out of the way. If you're coming from GPT, Notion AI, or any of the other big name tools, you're probably used to a pretty simple deal. You get X messages per day, week, month. Use them however you want. With Claude, it's not that simple. It's not just about counting messages or even about how many words you generate. Claude's whole model is built around something called sessions. A session isn't just a chat, it's a block of time, a 5-hour window that starts the instant you send your first message. It doesn't matter whether you send 45 messages or just one polite thanks. That's your session. The clock is ticking. And this is the first thing that trips up almost everyone, especially indie devs who like to dip in and out of AI chats as they work. You're working on your app at 10 a.m. Quick Claude question. Session starts. You take a break, go for a walk, come back at 3 p.m., send a new prompt. Boom, that's a second session. Even if it's literally, Claude, what was that code snippet from earlier? This might sound like a small thing, but it changes everything about how you work with Claude. Here's where I want to be real. For a long time, I hated this model. I wanted to just send messages whenever, get help, and move on. But as I started to understand the why behind sessions, I actually found some benefits. When you know you've got a 5-hour window, you're more likely to sit down and actually work, not just scatter random questions throughout the day. It's almost like a Pomodoro on hard mode. Okay, session started, let's go. There's something quietly satisfying about seeing how much you can get done in a session. I'll batch all my gnarly refactoring, code reviews, and teach me this obscure API prompts into one intense block, and it just feels good. I'm not context switching, I'm building. Seriously, there's a reason Claude does this. If every dev just hammered the API 24/7, the platform would get overloaded fast. By pacing usage, it actually helps keep the service reliable for everyone, including solo makers like us, but I'll be honest, it takes some getting used to, and it's not perfect, which brings me to the practical side. So, okay, you're kind of getting the whole session thing now, or maybe you're like, still skeptical. Fair, but here's where it starts to get real. What do those sessions actually look like, depending on the plan you're on? All right, Claude's got 3 main options. There's the Pro plan, $20 a month. This one gives you unlimited sessions, which sounds amazing on paper, like infinite resets, right? But each session has a pretty tight cap, around 45 messages, so you can hop in and out all day, but don't expect long-winded convos. Then there's the Max plan. That one's $100, and instead of unlimited sessions, you get 50 per month, but those sessions, chunky. You get 225 messages in each one, which is actually great if you're doing big feature work or debugging marathons, but also you've only got 50 of them, so every session kind of matters. And then, yeah, there's Max Plus, $200 a month, still 50 sessions, but now you've got 900 messages to play with. I mean, that's like a full-on dev sprint with an AI pair programmer on tap, heavy-duty stuff, but here's the gotcha. And it's a sneaky one. Most people think they'll run out of messages first, but that's not what happens. It's the sessions that trip you up fast. Like, say you're on the Max plan, you open Claude in the morning, send a quick prompt, then you bounce. do some other stuff, and come back in the afternoon. Boom, new session. Later that night, you have an idea. Send one more thing. That's session number 3. Just like that. 3 sessions, maybe 6 messages total. That's it. So yeah, it adds up quicker than you'd think. Let's say you're using the max plan. You log in at 9 a.m. and ask a question. You get your answer. You get busy, go to a meeting, come back at 3 p.m. You ask another question. Congrats. You just burned 2 of your 50 sessions in a single day with just 2 messages. It's wild, right? But it gets more interesting when you actually map this to your workflow. All right, let me walk you through what a day actually looks like as a solo dev using Claude. Because the way these sessions work, they sneak up on you. So you wake up, sit down with your laptop, and you're ready to squash a bug or two. You open Claude, toss it your stack trace, ask a couple questions, maybe get it to clean up a SwiftUI view. All good. That's one session. You're in the zone, making progress. Then you take a break, maybe lunch, maybe just some emails. You come back in the afternoon with a fresh idea and ask Claude to sketch out a high-level design for a new feature. Boom. That's session 2. Not because you did anything wrong, just because more than 5 hours passed. Fast forward to the evening, you're winding down with your side project. You ask Claude to help write some unit tests. That's session 3. Thing is, you didn't use Claude heavily, maybe only 20 messages in total, but now you've burned through 3 sessions in one day, just like that. At first, I hated that. I really did. I kept thinking, why can't this just be normal? Why does every little check-in burn a session? But eventually I noticed something. It started training me to batch things up, to be more deliberate. Now I treat it like a sprint. I sit down, list out what I want to get done, and say, this is going to be my Claude block, feature planning, some coding help, maybe some doc writing. Let's knock it all out right now. It's not perfect, but weirdly, it pushed me into a better rhythm. I stopped context switching so much. I actually finished more. Oh, and here's a dumb thing I did early on. I kept saying thanks after Claude answered, like every time, real polite. But each of those little thank you messages, yep, new session if 5 hours had passed. I burned through 10 sessions in a week that way, just on follow-ups. So yeah, Claude's polite, but maybe don't be too polite back. So let's ask the obvious. Why not just count messages like everyone else? When you're running a large language model, costs can spiral fast. If Anthropic let every user just send unlimited messages or start a session every 5 minutes, you'd have some people, or bots, absolutely hammer the system. With the session model, Anthropic can predict their costs, limit abuse, and actually offer more value to real users, including indie devs like us. If you use the $100 max plan, 50 sessions, times 225 messages, equals 11,250 messages per month if you fully utilize every session. But if you're not careful, you might only get a few hundred messages in before you hit the session limit. On Pro, you don't have to worry about session limits, but you can only send about 45 messages per session. This is great for more casual users or folks who just want to pop in and out all day. If you're living in Claude all day, working on a big project, the max plan is great as long as you batch your work and make every session count. If you're bouncing in and out, the Pro plan gives you more freedom, but you'll run up against the message cap more often. I've switched back and forth between them, depending on what kind of month I'm having. All right, so let's get into how to actually make this weird session system work for you instead of against you. What changed things for me was thinking of Claude not as a chat tool, but almost like a sprint partner. Instead of randomly dropping in and asking questions throughout the day, I started blocking out Claude time, like literally, okay, from 1 to 4 p.m., this is my Claude window. Before starting, I jot down stuff I want to ask, bugs I need help with, ideas I want to explore, docs I've been putting off, and then I open Claude and go. It's kind of wild how productive that gets. 5 hours might not sound like a ton, but if you go in with a plan, you can knock out a lot. Design, implementation, testing. I've done full feature passes in one session. One thing that helped a ton was keeping a little Claude scratchpad like a journal. Anytime I think of something I want to ask or check or refactor, I just toss it in there. Then when session time rolls around, I already have a game plan. It makes the session feel more like a build session with a supercharged copilot. And the best part, if I finish early and still have time left in the session, I just throw in whatever's on my mind, like random questions, naming ideas, or even quick code cleanup. May as well use the full window, right? The only thing I really try to keep an eye on is the clock. If I start a session at 11 a.m., I'll set a soft reminder for 4, just to be aware when it's about to expire. That way I don't accidentally burn a whole new session on something tiny 5 hours and 1 minute later. So yeah, Claude's limits are weird, but once I leaned into them, they kind of made me sharper, less scattered, more focused. It's not just about saving sessions, it's about getting into the habit of building with more intention. I get it. This whole session thing feels like a weird rule slapped on top of a tool that's supposed to just help you build. But honestly, as an indie dev, I've started to see it less as a limitation and more as a kind of unexpected structure, like a guardrail you didn't ask for, but maybe kind of needed. I mean, we're already dealing with limited time, limited focus, and often zero external accountability. Anything that nudges you into deep work, even if it's just a timer in disguise, can actually be pretty useful. When I know I've got 5 hours to make the most of a session, I tend to show up more focused. I don't ping Claude with random one-liners. I bring questions that matter. I push to get stuff done. It's like sprinting with a coach silently watching the clock. And the thing is, it also stops me from becoming too reliant. Like when you know you can't talk to Claude 24/7, you start thinking for yourself again. You trust your instincts. You Google things. You sketch ideas on paper. It sounds small, but that little shift in habit makes a big difference. Also, the responses get better when you work this way, because if you keep all your questions in one session, the context is fresh. Claude remembers your code, your intent, what you're building. It feels more like a teammate and less like a Q&A robot. That actually happened when I was building out the onboarding flow for one of my apps. I just blocked out an afternoon, ran everything through Claude, from UI design to view model logic to nav testing, all in one go. Because I kept it all in one session, the back and forth felt more fluent. I shipped that whole feature by the end of the day, like actually done. So yeah, it's a bit quirky, but if you lean into the rhythm of it, batch your thinking, stay focused, use the time well, Claude's session model can quietly level up how you work. All right, let's be honest. Sometimes this session system feels like it's working against you. You're in the middle of a productive streak, Claude's been helping, everything's flowing, and then you hit the wall. No more sessions today. That moment sucks. And yeah, I've been there more times than I'd like to admit. One time I blew through my session count by Thursday and had to spend the rest of the week coding the old school way. No AI lifeline, just me, Xcode, and a Google tab. But weirdly, those moments are kind of revealing because they force you to slow down. They make you realize just how much you've been leaning on the tool. Not in a bad way necessarily, but maybe more than you thought. Whenever I hit session burnout, I try not to panic. I just close the tab, take a little breather, sketch out some ideas, or write a few things in notes. Sometimes I'll jump over to Cursor or GPT if I really need a second opinion. But honestly, half the time I just keep building without help. And it reminds me that, yeah, I still know how to code. If I'm running out of sessions fast, I take a minute to look back. Was I batching my work, or was I just firing off messages randomly throughout the day? Most of the time, the answer is, I could have planned it better. So if you ever feel stuck, just know it's not the end of the world. Take a walk, keep building, the session will reset. And when it does, you'll probably come back with better questions anyway. Sometimes those Claude free days, kind of refreshing. All right, let's take a step back from the plans, the numbers, and the frustration, because here's the thing I've been thinking about lately. Maybe usage limits, annoying as they are, aren't always bad. Maybe they're doing something useful in a backward sort of way. We always talk about AI like it should be endless, infinite sessions, infinite messages, help on demand. But what if that's not actually the best setup for how we build? As solo devs, our lives are already built around constraints. We've got limited hours, limited energy, limited budget. Some days you barely have the brain space to choose between two SF symbols. So when Claude throws a limit at us, yeah, it's frustrating, but it's also kind of familiar. It's another little boundary that forces us to stop and think, okay, what actually matters right now? And I'll be real, I'm kind of grateful for that, because the longer I use tools like this, the more I notice how easy it is to just offload everything, to fire off 100 shallow questions and avoid making any real decisions. But when you know the clock is ticking, when every session actually counts, you think more clearly, you prep, you pause, you build with a little more care, and maybe that's the point. Claude isn't limitless, but neither are we. And weirdly, that might be what makes it a better fit for indie builders like us. I want to end with something a little softer. AI tools are incredible, but they're not the point. Building is the point. Shipping your indie app, finishing your side project, learning a new skill, that's what matters. Claude, GPT, all these tools, they're just helpers. If usage limits nudge us to be a little more intentional, to take more breaks, or to trust our own intuition more often, I actually think that's a good thing. We're not just AI users, we're creators. So that's my take on Claude's usage limits. Not just what the rules are, but how you can actually use them to build a better solo workflow. If you've got your own stories, tricks, or session horror stories, I'd love to hear them in the comments. Or if you have questions, ask away. I try to answer every single one. If this was helpful, feel free to like, subscribe, or share it with another indie dev who's wrestling with AI in their workflow. Until next time, keep crafting, keep learning, and don't let a session timer stop you from building something awesome. Peace.